Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to another edition of Tough Talking Thursday on Focus on Liberia. My name is Dennis Jai, and we are broadcasting from Atlanta, Georgia. In tonight's edition of Tough Talking Thursday, we're going to be looking at framing the discussion or framing the narrative for 2023 elections. What are some of the issues that really which the election should be about? What are some of the questions voters should be asking themselves? What are some of the questions voters should be asking the candidates? And how can the voters be able to tell if the candidate is not telling the truth and everything in between? Again, want to welcome all our viewers across the globe. This is Tough Talking Thursday, where we talk tough and there is no room for tabata. Joining me from Minnesota is our consultant, that's FOL Governance and Planning Consultant, Mr. Ahmed K. Salif. Ahmed, welcome to Focus on Liberia.
Thank you, Dennis. Let's do it once again.
I want to welcome a former commissioner of the Truth and Reconciliation Commission, Ms. Mansa Emilio Washington, also a veteran journalist. Mansa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. A pleasure always.
Thank you. I want to welcome our chief political analyst, that's FOL chief political analyst, Mr. Wilmot Wetty Cooney. Mr. Cooney is a proponent of the We Are One round victory. Mr. Cooney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dennis. Happy to be here.
I want to also welcome Mr. Kalebo Gonglo, the man who is frequent now on FOL Tough Talking Thursday, so we consider him a panelist here. Mr. Kalebo, the guy who eats, sleep, and drinks statistics. Welcome to the show.
Well, my pleasure. Thank you, Dennis. And I'm happy to share the panel with Ms. Washington, Ahmed, and Mohammed, and the one round propellant, Wilmot Cooney.
Thank you. I also want to welcome our political analyst, a product of Waplo Institute, all the way from Kalipo Kanwiken, joining us by way of Philadelphia, Mr. Mohammed Sharif. Comrade Sharif, welcome to the show.
It's great to be here, Dennis. Thank you.
We want to welcome all our viewers from across the globe. This is Tough Talking Thursday. Well, I stated from the beginning about framing the narrative for 2023 legislative and presidential elections. I mean, it's a big topic. I struggle with, saying, considering the question voters should be asking. I don't want to, sound like I'm putting words in voters' mouth or that voters don't know what they are asking, but it's a way to generate a discussion. So voters, please permit me. I'm not trying to say you don't know what you're looking for, but we want to discuss something when it comes to the narrative. Let me start by going around the room and see what are the issues currently being discussed when it comes to the Liberian political system as we go into 2023 elections. What are we hearing? What are the issues that are popping up from the mouths of the candidates that voters and people are concerned about as we go into the elections? Let me start with our governance and planning consultant, Mr. Salif. Mr. Salif, what's in the air? What are the issues currently? What are things that people are talking about when it comes to voting for either a president, a lawmaker, and so forth?
Thank you, Dennis. Once again, I'm happy to be here. Look, one wouldn't even know where to begin. Liberia is so inundated with issues and by issues, be there from basic social services to major capital investment or the lack thereof to critical infrastructure. And we talk about basic services, you're talking about healthcare, education, the economy, creating that investment, foreign direct investment environment, creating a financial system so people can thrive, the country, people can be happy and develop and govern well. But to begin with, that narrative setting typically in a political campaign doesn't come from the people. Although the people know the issues that they are impacted by and they are afflicted with, it comes from the political parties, political organizations, candidates in terms of their manifestos. Manifestos are platforms. Otherwise, in Liberia, we say platform. Their observation of the governance issues and the critical things that they believe, the social programs that their candidate or political parties believe that they will be able to deliver and how they will do so. Then you do that, and then you frame those issues, issues by issues, so that the voters, it's kind of like a political marketplace. There's competition, there are other candidates, there are other political parties, everybody's in there. So you have to be able to package a product and sell the product that the customer is familiar with. The customer in this case is the voter. You're on mute,
Now,
Dennis.
Massa, you witnessed or cover some of these elections, I believe. Historically, what are Liberian elections, or in our most recent history, what has Liberian election been about?
Well, I think the past couple of elections that I observed and witnessed, I think have been about the basic bread and butter issues. It is interesting how from elections to elections, these issues are basically the same. They never go away, except that they become more expanded, or they take on other forms. But it's always bread and butter issues. For example, high unemployment. People are saying the country is hard. As we speak right now, so many persons have already flooded my inbox asking for the 26. People can send their kids to school. It's becoming more and more challenging. The economy is at a dire strait situation right now. And then in addition to that, the difference with this election is that in addition to the standard and the regular bread and butter issues, now you have the issues of life. Life meaning that human rights is going to be an issue in these elections because of the violence that is taking place all over Liberia unabated as we speak. Every other day we wake up in the morning, our emails, Facebook, social media is flooded with images of people being murdered, people being killed, people, someone has disappeared. So the violence has reached such epic proportion that it is really going to be difficult to ignore in this election cycle. So definitely people are going to be focusing on those standard bread and butter issues. But I think the issues of the right to live is definitely going to be something that the Liberian people are going to be looking at.
Mr. Sherry, is that really from your own observation? Even though those issues exist, but have our elections been about those issues?
Thank you, Dennis. So historically, Liberian, there have always been issues. Whether or not the voters have voted along those issues is the question. There've always been issues. So, for example, in the 1847 election, uh, the genesis of it was the issue of duty-free privileges. We talked about that extensively on this platform, so I'm not going to go through all of that now. Uh, there were issues there in 1847. In 1869, E.J. Roy and the Truick Party versus James Spriggs Spain. There were issues, and the TWP dethroned the Republican Party. At the time, Republicans were very successful at the beginning of the Liberian, modern Liberian, politics. And then 1951, there was also issues in 1951, the 12 versus William V. Tubman. In 1955, there were issues, William V. Tubman versus Edwin Barkley. 1985, Samuel Doe versus Jackson F. Doe and others, there were issues as well. And you come up to 1997, in fact, the issues were there, some of the issues that Massa just mentioned. On top of that, in 1997, there was the issue of security. And people were saying that, Charles Taylor, who brought the war, is the one who can give us peace. And a lot of voters flocked to Charles Taylor. Of course, I disagree. And I will state that the Liberian voters voted for Charles Taylor based on ethnocentrism and the rest of it. So that's a totally different discussion for another day. And And then again, so what, Dennis, we have to ask ourselves, what has happened since 1997 to now? The issues have always been there, but somehow the voters have voted differently, I think. And so that is the thing that we have to ask ourselves. And we have to now look at 2023 as an election where it's very critical, because if you look at George Weah, he's, he is supposed to be in trouble in any other country, but it doesn't seem that way. In fact, to conclude now, right in Nimba County the other day, some group of Liberians collected money and gave to George Weah, that they are satisfied with his leadership. And the president of the Republic of Liberia took this bribe and put it in his pocket and said, "I'm going to eat this money." And in the Liberian terminology, say, "I'm going to eat this money." That is bribe. The president does not understand that. But so we have to now be concerned as to what's going to happen in 2023.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo, something I call push or pull. Has our elections been what that it is the candidate that is driving it, that is pushing those issues that voters concerned about, or it is the voters that are pulling these candidates to themselves, as saying, "Here are my issues. If you care about my issues, if you do X, Y, Z, then I'm going to vote for you." Who is driving these discussions when it comes to our voting populace?
Well, Dennis, thank you. I think the both sides can always be right on the issue. The voters can also ask questions, as well as those who seek in office can also ask questions, can also try to set the agenda. But I think in context of the larger discussion, let's look at our recent history. And let's look at 2017 election and the upcoming 2023 election. We are in a totally different era, and in a different media landscape. We have the social media that is now setting agenda. Okay, not like 1985 when you have to depend on EABS or EAW to say something on radio. Today we are in a different new territory. We are in citizen journalism era, where somebody can say to my village in Glaisopie and basically drive you in the national agenda, depending on how many persons are following them, on social media. So that said, I think the larger question to ask ourselves at this moment is, we are less than 2 years to election. What are given the dire situation in the country, what are some of the issues that the political parties, the political leadership in Liberia is not talking about? Much more, just as it is important to talk about to analyze what they are talking about, it's also important to raise the question, what are they not talking about? Because what I'm hearing from both sides, leading opposition, I may emphasize, and the ruling party, I think it's a race to see who is more corrupt, who is more tainted than the other. I think that's what I'm hearing from them. But that's not what is going to save Liberia. That is not going to address the bread and butter issue. But when we continue, I may add more to this. But
right,
we are not hearing the issues from both sides.
And that was going to be my second. That was going to be my second question.
We are not hearing the issue from both sides
because the politicians are talking. But let me go to Mr. Kunin first, or Mr. Kunin last on this one. Mr. Kunin, what are you hearing from the people that want to be president and lawmakers? I don't want us to focus too much on the just on the presidency, but also the lawmakers. What are the issues being discussed? What are they started talking already? What are you hearing from them?
Well, no, Dennis, I don't want to speak for lawmakers because the lawmakers come from diverse political institutions. I rather speak for the Congress for Democratic Change that I support, the leadership that I support. I agree with some what most of the panelists said. The issue in Liberia, those issues have always been the same: issue of education, issue of the economy, issue of infrastructure, issue of employment, all of these things. And we are really comfortable that come this 2023, the Liberian people are going to have a real discussion on the accomplishment of this administration. they will have an opportunity to evaluate the pro-poor agenda, the pro-poor policies of this administration, the incredible accomplishment of the president, of the leadership at this time, and they will be making their own analysis as to whether this leadership deserves re-election or not. But it will not only be on the accomplishment of the president. It will not only be what this government has achieved. I think the Liberian people will also be asking themselves as they will be making a choice decision. Do we really, they will be making a choice between people who want to replace the current leadership and the current leadership. So it will be a discussion both on the accomplishment, which we are comfortable with. There are incredible accomplishments that has been made by this administration. And then there's also going to be a discussion on the choice aspect. Do you want this person to replace the current leadership that is doing so much for the country? And we say that at the same time stipulating that there are challenges in our country. There are challenges in our country. The country is not 100% perfect, but there are incredible improvement that this administration has put in place. And I think at the right time, the Liberian people, they will decide very, very decisively that this administration should be re-elected. I just wanted to make one quick correction before we close. Look, we don't have human rights issue in Liberia. Liberia, like any other society, has crime issues. So we have to make a little distinction on these things. There are crime issues, yes. There are criminals going around Liberia committing crime in which other citizens are victimized. But we don't have a human rights issue. To say that we have a human rights issue, you are talking about government-sponsored action that infringes on the rights and the liberties of the Liberian people. We don't have that situation in Liberia. What we have in Liberia are crime issues.
Nasa, you want to respond to that before I go to Salif?
Well, I think Wilmer has tried to define human rights, I think wrongly. That's not what I'm getting from him. That's not what human rights means. Human rights is not always that the government is violating the rights of people. Human rights can also be that the rights of other citizens are being violated by other citizens, and the government looks away or it does nothing to bring relief to those other citizens that have been injured. So human rights is a broad terminology. I just want to correct that. So when we talk about the issue of human rights, don't forget we also have police brutality. Now you may say that these are not things that are unique to Liberia, they happen everywhere else. But the difference between Liberia and other societies, even just United States, that some of us live in, is that they have proper institutions that deal with these issues outside of political influence. So, for example, the issue of police brutality in this United States, you see how it's being addressed. People go to jail for it. People get class action lawsuits. You have the Black Lives Matter movement, all of that. Now, just the other day, you had a security officer of one of the top government official allegedly murder somebody. Every day you hear police beating this person and that person. Even ordinary citizens who kill other people for whatever reason. People don't have the kind of redress. People don't feel safe. Well, I don't know who Liberians you're speaking to, but the Liberians that we're speaking to who live in Liberia, they call us all the time. We know some of the victims. We know some of the families. So to sit here and say we don't have any human rights issues, we have crimes taking place, but crimes and human rights are synonymous, because when you violate the human rights of other people, you commit crimes. So, I just want to get that clear.
I want to make a quick rejoinder there. The question is not that people are not dying or crime is not taking place. Look, when we speak, certain words have professional context. I'm saying in the professional context, when you accuse a government of human rights, then you are saying the government has a deliberate and calculated policies to go after its opponents. If we expand Master's definition of human rights, then of course, then even there is human rights violation
Not
in the United States
necessarily, Mr.
because people are
Mr.
dying
Kuhn,
every day. People
Mr.
die in
Kuhn,
every place you are traveling.
But Wema, you want to be on the
Even when
defensive.
government
Wema,
fail
you
to,
want to
to,
be on
to
the defensive.
uphold
Who
our
accused
own
the government
standard,
of human rights here? Who
it
accused the
doesn't have to
government of
be
human rights?
intentional.
hold on,
The
hold on,
security
fellas.
person you're
Saying
talking
that
about,
Hold
the
on, hold
security
on.
person was
I am
Let
a
us
saying,
not cross
respect
talk.
the
Wema,
police.
listen. I am
The
saying
security
that
person
human
was
rights
a
violations are taking place. I am saying that human rights violations are taking place. I am not necessarily saying that your government is committing human rights
Right,
violations,
and that's
even
where I
though we
wanted to
have some
come in. Thank
instances.
you, Marcel. Let me
Okay,
come
but
in
I'm
here.
saying that human rights violations are taking place, and
Thank
people
you.
are not getting the
crime
appropriate
is taking
redress.
place in Liberia.
Thank you, Mr. Kuhn. I don't know how you differentiate human right and crime.
Well,
If you
it's
put,
this,
hold on, now, Mr. Kuhn. I know what the tenant said that when somebody speak of an issue in Liberia, then they are accusing the government. I think that's what is that is driving you in that direction. But
no,
what I'm
it's not.
saying, but
Dennis,
what
But
happened
that's
is
what he's
even the
saying. But
people
that's
that
what
are
he's saying.
It's not.
people that are detained without trial, that's they violate their human right. If human right is just, I don't want us to deviate. Let me go
No,
to you,
Dennis is
yeah,
not
Mr.
hold
Lee.
different.
on,
Where is
Mr.
professional
Mr.
meaning? There's a
Coney.
difference between hunger and farming. There are differences when you
I
Mr.
think
Kuhn, let us not
Look,
go there
look,
because it's
look,
Woman, you are
Den-
wrong on this issue. You are
Dennis,
just wrong on
yeah,
this issue. Plain and
Dennis,
simple.
I don't want to tell you how to run your show, but Mr. Conning, for God's sake, they say you are a political analyst for FOL. Can you be objective for once? I mean, if you are coming to just speak for the government, be a propagandist, that's one thing. But if you look at objective issues or issues that other professionals know about, have background and training and experience in, I think that's disingenuous. Human
you got
rights.
a problem with differing opinion. I think
Well,
that's your
listen,
problem.
it's not different opinion.
let him
That's
finish,
your
Mr.
problem.
Kuhn.
Unless
Mr. Kuhn,
That's
let
your
him
problem.
finish.
It's not my problem.
you see, no,
Mr.
no,
Kuhn,
we
let him finish.
respected you when you were giving comments. When you were making comments, we respected you. Look, Liberia is our country. We all care about Liberia. We come here not to disparage the country. If the government is doing well, you don't have to labor so hard to defend it. Human rights, I give you typical examples. This is not a human rights show, but there what's called positive rights and negative rights. Well, negative rights could be, what people are doing to people, but what the government, for example, is supposed to do, basic social services, environment it ought to create for people to do well, to thrive, to be happy. If you don't do that, that is a violation of their rights. You have social, political, and cultural rights. You have women convention, children convention, all the rape that are happening, all the child abuse issues that we're seeing, and the hunger and then children selling in the street and just the lack of well water in the country alone. Those are sort of replete human rights problems. But it is not about human. This is not a human rights show
Yeah,
per se. No, it's not about the CDC government. If it is, you should have let us know ahead of time to have come here prepared to address those. Dennis.
So can I give a rebuttal?
However, if we're going into talking about agenda setting, talking about questions and issues voters should be asking. Kalebo is right. I mean, when I said, agenda setting really should come from manifestos and political platforms and programs that politicians, people who are seeking elected office, are proposing and bringing to the people in the political marketplace. Yeah, that's on the one hand, but of course, the people themselves know what they lack and what they need and what's not happening, and the basic services that people should be bringing to as your elected representative, your senator. How does your advocate at a national level? Those are questions that voters have to be basically holding people's feet to the fire and bringing about scrutiny, asking questions. What is it that you've done before? What is your record, your past performance history somewhere? What guarantee do we have that what you're saying is better than the other person? If voters ask the question, oh, you want us to answer whether we are better, than 5 years ago? To be honest with you, I don't think a lot of Liberians that I speak to will answer that they are better today than they were 5 years ago, and therefore they will re-elect President Weah automatically. I really don't believe that, right? I mean, I just believe that the issues are onerous, yes, but there are a lot of misgovernance, missed opportunity, missed rules happening in Liberia. We have to be true to ourselves. We can't just sit here just because we support a particular political party or particular president, or they happen to have come from my side of the country or my particular ethnic calling, and therefore I just blindly support these people without questioning them. That is a disservice to the country that you claim to love. Is a disservice to the Liberian people. I'm sorry I have to be emotional, but we just really have to be careful when we come here because people listen and follow us.
Thank you. I have to give Mr. Kone the opportunity to respond.
One of the stunning things
Dennis,
that
I just wanted to add to it.
one of the no, they give
Hold on,
me
let
the
Mr. Kone
opportunity,
respond.
please.
Mr. Kalebo, I'll come to you.
One of the stunning things that always sometimes happen on this platform is how people feel very much entitled to their view, and they think their view is more patriotic than the view of other people. They rush into lazy argument of ethnicity. They rush into lazy argument of supporting government. The point I'm making is that there are killings in Liberia. I didn't dispute that. I'm saying there has to be a distinction between issues of crime and issue of human rights. That's my opinion. How does that mean? How does that amount to ethnicity? Why are people so lazy in this place that when somebody is so timid, when somebody expresses their view, it's either for ethnicity. If you read the United States State Department Human Rights Report, there is a distinction between political killing and general issue of killing. They make that distinction. I'm making a distinction that there is a distinction between general issue of crime, the incapacitation of our institutions to confront crime, and what you call human rights violation.
Then
No,
state
Grandma
your
Kuni,
case.
those
Then
are all
state your
human
case.
rights issues.
State your
It
case.
is my
All of those
opinion.
issues,
It got nothing
all
to
of
do
those,
with
all
my
of those
tribe.
issues
Masa,
It
let
got
borders,
nothing to do with
all
my
of those
tribe.
issues borders
It
around the
is my
human rights.
opinion. It got nothing to do with
All
my
of those,
tribe. And
all of those
you
issues
on,
are
guys
Masa.
human
are
rights issues.
disrespectful that whenever I give
All of
my
those
view, you
issues are
connect it
human
to
rights
tribe.
issues.
Hold on, Masa. I mean, I believe those are human rights issues. Oh, Mr. Kalebo, from what I see, I know we want to say that yes, people are discussing issue, but from my experience, what I see here is many people already have a side before the elections, and you are just looking for things to use to support your side. Do you really see how campaign issues are driving, the voters anywhere, or people just have their sides, they dig their toes in it, and then you just support and make or white even when it is black for your side? Most of the time, that's what I see. I don't see really people issues like you. I've not seen where someone even come from behind has a base on the issues that they are discussing and they win elections.
Well,
Mr. Clever.
I think it's a fair observation to make, but if I may add, there are multiple issues in Liberia that we have to deal with historically. The quality of education, the quality of civic engagement in our school system, even the narrative framing from political parties, from political leaders is also important, So you see now in Liberia, I mean, in the mix of social media, those who are talking about the issues, those who are raising alarm that media following sometimes are not even the political leaders. They are just ordinary citizens. In some instances, they are not even seeking political offices. They are acting on behalf of political leaders, but they are basically driving the national agenda in some instances. So the sad thing in Liberia, I don't want to just say it's generally sometimes the problem in most African countries, and by extension, I would say in America as well. If you take the Republican Party, I mean, sometimes what Donald Trump say as illogical, it may appear to even my daughter, but you see an adult Republican stand and say that's it. So it is sad, but I think wrong in Africa, wrong in America, wrong is just wrong. It doesn't depend on the color of it or the geographic or location of it. Wrong is just wrong. Okay, so but I think Liberia is a kind of different situation. We have an acute situation. We are among the least developed countries in the world by ranking. I mean, on many of the SDG indicators, Liberia is at the bottom of it. That is why our situation is like Councillor Gonlo would say, Liberia is in an ICU room now. because on all the indicators, we are the least. We need to have some degree of patriotism, whether you are a CDC supporter, whether you are opposition supporter, you should speak out, on some common issues that people agree on. I mean, Mr. Kune, I've listened to him at some point. He has admitted that, hey, there are issues with police performance, there are issues with education, there are issues with healthcare. We discussed it on the show at one point. I mean, generally, he admit to most of the failures in Liberia today. I mean, we don't want to put everything on the government today, but if you are government of the present, you have the responsibility to take charge to make things better. You don't rely on those who didn't do well in 1847 to say it has been like this since 1847. You came as a change agent that I'm going to do things differently. But you're not even sailing toward the shore. You are going in the middle of the ocean to cascade to cast out this boat. That is what you're doing. And that is the issue. But on the side note, let me just end on this. On the human rights issue, I know this show is not about human rights, but we all have read the State Department report. Sometimes even the State Department will always, in most instances, put the blame on the government feet, because government is a protector of the nation. They have the arms, they have this intelligence, they have everything. Sometimes they will report extrajudicial killings and what have you, and they'll say the government has failed to take steps on this. Government has failed to protect the human rights of ordinary citizens who have been led, vulnerable to criminal gangs. The State Department will point this thing out. Remember, everything is at the feet of the government. And to argue about opinion is not about opinion. I mean, there's some axiom in life that oxygen plus water, hydrogen plus water plus oxygen is water. It's just a fact. You can't say, oh, my opinion is hydrogen plus oxygen is nitrogen. No, you don't have opinion on that.
Yeah, that's a scientific being proven scientifically. But I don't know if we are talking science here, Mr. Gonglo.
I mean, on human rights issue,
Okay.
there are models, there are conventions that nations have acceded to, have signed. So that's my proof that
All
you
right.
agree that these are things you uphold in your country. Okay, so
Let-
somebody
let-
can say, "Oh, I define human rights this way." No, you don't have. It's not how you define it. It's how the conventions have defined it, for which your country signed and ratified. That's the argument.
I see where you're going, Mr. Shabri. Let's look at some issues here. Let's look at the economy, prices, unemployment. That's one. We go to agriculture or food security. People are hungry. People are not eating. Right. Security. People save to travel at night, to travel anywhere in the country. Let's look at gender issues. We look at health, education, so the delivery of social services, and of course human rights. Has any election been about any of these issues, or what should the narrative be when it comes to this issue? Have we gone to an election and say, hey, this government reduced unemployment from this level to this level, so we're going to vote for them, or we have reduced crimes, or the educational system that we have improved, we have more colleges or universities, this is the standard of living? Has there been any instance? If no or yes, how do we frame discussions along those lines so that our elections will be more issue driven than personality driven?
Yeah. So, I mean, Dennis, you will remember in '85, it was about whether or not they were able to communicate what they were trying to do. The contenders, the opposition contenders, were so hell bent on ensuring that the military goes back to the to the military barracks. That that they didn't think that it was a good thing for the military to continue. So any continuation of Mr. Dole's Samuel K. Dole's presidency was seen as an extension of the military junta that took over as a result of the military coup of 1980. So that was the issue that the opposition heavily campaigned on. You're right. It wasn't mainly centered around economy at this point, because the predominant issue in 1985 was that, the military now has dominated the social the social.
And Mr. Sharif, that's my point, right? Because it's always like, okay, the military is bad, don't have to go. We are is bad, we are has to go. And this kind of thing, right? I'm speaking. I don't know if that's supposed to happen or it should only be that this person or that person. Should how do we frame it into that issue so that we get okay, who's going to be tough on human rights? Who's going to be tough on, as Trump would say, the border? Who's going to make our school system, the school system that Mr. Salif said was a mess? Who's going to bring it back? Who's going to bring JFK to pre-war status? Those kind of things, right? Healthcare, education, gender, and all the 9 yards. But it's what I see most of the time is we are talking about, who can do it. Oh, I am the one who's supposed to do it. I am the one who's going to do it. How do we drive this to be issue driven?
Dennis, I mentioned a few minutes ago, political scientists will have to come back and study the Liberian political attitude, especially since 1997, because it has changed. I told you also that there were issues back then. For example, in 1955, Elwin Barkley stated that he went against William V. Tubman because Tubman had opened the door too wide. Remember, Tubman had this open door policy where foreign investors were invited into the country at a very significant rate, and Edwin Barkley was discontent. And mind you, Barkley turned over Tubman was handpicked by Barkley, but he came back. One of the things he stated was that the door was too wide and the average Liberians were suffering, that the average Liberian need to take hold of the economy of the country, that foreigners were taking over the Liberian economy. And that's one of the reasons why he came back to get his old job back. Of course, at this point, Tubman was very entrenched and, in all kinds of things, including fraud. And so Barkley didn't have a chance in that election. So, again, I mentioned briefly in 1985, 1997, the issue that we have, Dennis, and it's really hard to analyze, the Liberian voter. I've said numerous times on this show, it is really, really difficult. The very Liberian voters that we're talking about now are collecting money, are planning to come to George Weah's next birthday bash, a very irrelevant, unnecessary occasion, right? So there is no need for these people to collect gifts and stuff to come and celebrate George Weah. There's no need for all of this. In the United States, we're not sitting out here celebrating Joe Biden's birthday. We're not doing that. But you see the Liberian people, yesterday or the day before, people collecting money and hand to the president, which is really corruption, kickback, quid pro quo, right? That's what that is. So, it is very, very difficult to analyze these issues. I think there's a need, and what you're trying to get at, and I get your question, I think there is a real need to educate the Liberian voter. These things don't start overnight. There has to be a systemic effort in the schools, for example, starting in primary school. Civic, Cole has talked about this, several times. There has to be, the civic education that's going to educate the Liberian people to know their responsibility, to know their own history, to know their responsibility, so that when they're going to the ballot box, they know what they're voting. Even before they go to the ballot box, they know what they're voting for. So right now, there is a large, very, very, very large segment of the Liberian population that's not issue driven. What they're looking at is who's going to bring the T-shirt, who's going to bring the bag of rice and the T-shirt. And so this is where we are. And it's very scary because when you have that, what you're going to have is demagogues and corrupt politicians. The George Weahs of this world will come in and do whatever they can do, including stealing all of our money, and then pretending that he's developing the country. One day he'll get up with Prince Johnson and go to Nema County and give these people motorbikes and cars. I think he's going to do that because the women now are asking for their own motorbikes and cars because the chiefs have motorbikes and cars now. So this is the Liberia that we have. And Tiawan Gonglo, to his credit, has talked about some of these very things that we're talking about now. But who's listening, right? That's the question. Who's listening? And so there has to be a concerted effort. This thing will take a time, Dennis. It will take a time. And it has to start with some level of voter education.
Mr. Salif, it seems to me that the candidates are giving us, what they are, as you said, through their platform. Sometimes they don't even have platform.
Mhm.
I've asked on many occasions, and nobody is really showing me any platform. In your estimation, in what you said before, that normally it's from the platform that we get these issues. What are the questions that voters should be asking themselves, even before asking the candidates?
Well, thank you. I mean, Sharif says something very profound. In the ideal um, political campaign context, it's a systematized process, right? That's why political consultants advise the candidates to do what they call district analysis, demographic analysis, issues analysis, identify which segment of the population cares about which issue or issues, and then how do you take that message around it, drive it, and fit it in your sort of manifesto or platform. That's what you do in a typical campaign. However, like Sharif said, in our context, it is really difficult to analyze. First of all, we don't have a systematized campaign process. You try that, people say, "My man, it doesn't work here." And the people already know you're rich, you got money, you come, you give them stuff, bags of rice, you promise, you bring generator. Ask Edwin Snow in Bummy County, right? You come and bulldoze your way, you give people generator, you fix market store, you promise their children scholarship, you take a couple of people on an ECOWAS tour, you come back, everybody spread lapa for you, they vote for you. Okay, assuming even the election is free and fair, right? And sometimes you just sort of rake your way through it. You claim office, you have that authority, whether it's legit or not, whether you have a mandate or not, but you are the one who's there. Now, what voters should be asking for, of course, I'm not suggesting at all being presumptuous here that our people don't know any better. Of course, Liberia is a whole country. There are people who are issues-driven people. There are people who look at these things and they want to scrutinize the candidates. What can they do? What have they done in the past? But those are very few. Majority of our population, not just rural, Monrovia, every various demographics, honestly, they don't vote based on issues. They vote based on symbolism. They both vote based on tribal politics. They vote based on some kind of political party sentimentalism and things like that. And so, yeah, while there are critical questions they should be asking, the opposition side, how are you demonstrating that you're different and better, that you're going to do this different? On the incumbent side, the government side, well, you said you would do this in 2017, but see where we are. You're not doing this. You haven't done this. You haven't done that. You may have done some things here and there and some other cosmetic political projects, right? Campaign projects, but that doesn't really amount to campaign promise fulfillment and things like that. So it's complicated. I can't sit there and pretend that I can analyze the Liberian voter because they're just so unpredictable for a sort of a professional to try to systematize and analyze them based on issues.
Mr. Kone, I have an example here. So most of the time when I hear about the accomplishment of President Weah, for instance, say roads or free tuition, I normally I don't hear how such development or such role or such whatever move the president made impacted the voter that is talking. But yet they like it. Okay, the president has built the road from Nuclear Town to Douala, for instance. But this person probably has not been able to drive on that road. The president built this one. The president. What I don't really hear, I don't know if you hear that too, is how has this impacted me as an individual? How has this affected my pocketbook? Is it because the president built this road? Am I able to buy what I need? Are my children going to school now and their school fees being paid? So even with the question, what are some of the questions that voters should be asking the incumbent has the incumbent one powered back?
Well, look, Dennis, the question you asked, the Liberian people are already asking themselves that question every day. And with regard to the specific question you asked, the building of the roads, you know, those roads are not donated. They're not just put there. Those roads are built by people. The construction of those roads creates employment. And in addition, the construction of those roads improve the general quality of life in that community. So, for example, if you go to the rehab community, the Painsway area community, the Bannersway community, people will tell you the impact of all of these roads, how they are shortening their travel time, you know, and all of these things. People that children are going to school, people that are going to work, it impact them. And then you look at the road construction in Nimba. Nimba is a major economic corridor. Some of those roads are not completed, but those roads are on course. Those roads has the potential of opening an economic engine in that part of the country. So these things, they do have impact. You talk about the tuition free. The people students that were paying tuition before the policy, they're no longer paying tuition. They are there. They will tell you how their lives have changed with that. More go to, sometimes we minimize the WIAC fee. There were many Liberian students, high school students, that were carrying that burden of paying that fees. They no longer face that burden. So these people are making these decisions. You go to the JFK, you see the improvement that has been done at the John F. Kennedy Hospital. When we say these things again, our detractors, they kind of restate it to mean that everything in Liberia is perfect. We still have challenges in the healthcare sector, but there are improvements being made. Look at the construction of the Emirati Hospital in Bomi. That's a 100-bed hospital, and the nurses' quarters and everything has been constructed. That is not to say that there is no health challenges, but people are looking at the issues and are weighing the issues against the improvement that they are seeing. And the question they're going to ask themselves is, are we going to fire someone who is already doing these things to bring in somebody who is promising, who is just making promises, or someone who has no record at all of doing any of these things? That is the decision, that is the analysis the Liberian people are making on a daily basis. And it is on the strength of those analyses that people will make their decision. And critics can continue to dismiss those projects as cosmetic, political projects, whatever you call it. But these projects are changing the lives of people. If I were in a rural area of Liberia, I never saw light, and there is a solar panel light that somebody put there, and my children can go under that light to do their homework, it doesn't matter your classification. You know, like I said, there are some people that will not acknowledge that a road is built in Liberia until it looks like R95. Unfortunately, it may not look like R95, but that road impacts the life of people who live in that environment.
Thank you. Ms. Washington, what are some of the questions voters should be asking themselves? Voters should be asking the incumbent, and voters should be asking those who want to take President Weah's job.
Okay, first I would like to establish that the issues are out there. The issues are being discussed every day on the radio. Liberians are people who, majority of Liberians now have access to radio to call on all these talk shows. I think all of the 15 counties have radio stations. So Liberians are becoming more and more engaged. So the issues are out there. But the other issue with the Liberian voter is that it reminds me of a professor, one of my professors at the University of Liberia, who said once that Liberians tend to vote as other voters, and they vote on the trivia and not necessarily on those issues that you and me are discussing now. So the Liberian voter will be faced with all these different real issues. But then when they go to the polls to vote, they vote differently from the way you and me think. It's because someone mentioned that people will be voting on the basis of ethnicity. I think it was Ahmed. They look at the issue of ethnicity. They look at the issue of us versus them. The Liberian people, I mean, by and large, to a large extent, our body politics still consists of us versus them. And this us versus them syndrome takes on several different forms. You know, it could be the Congo people versus the country people, or the CDC versus the former Unity Party, and what have you. So Liberians always vote on these lines that, okay, we can put people there even though we know they may not have the competence, they may not have the experience, you know, in terms of governance, and some of them even have a solid track record, you know, like they work in previous governments before, they embezzle money, they stole from the general population, but then people will still vote them into public office. And the voters tend to be lenient, I think more lenient with the presidency. What I'm seeing in the last two elections, they are more lenient with the presidency. They will give the presidency a bigger pass, but the legislators now, I think, are the ones who are beginning to be in trouble now. I think the voters have so had it here with the legislators, or that, you know, there's $30,000 that they keep getting and all these things. So people are becoming more and more in tune with why they think the legislature is not necessarily, I mean, it's not a necessary institute. But when it comes to the presidency, people tend to give it a pass because people look at the issue, well, you know, oh, these are our own children, or these are our own people, they come from our ethnic group, or, oh, the other people were there before they got rich, let other people get rich too. Oh, we don't care whether they can do the job or not. The thing is that the time to get rich, because people assume automatically that when people come into government, or people go into government, they leave rich because they're going to be stealing, quote unquote. That's the assumption. So people think that. So what are the issues I think that the voters need to be looking at? Obviously, for me, a big issue, I would think that the number one issues that the voters really need to look at would be the issue of the economy. Okay, what is the living standard now of Liberians? How are people faring? You know, can you at least afford one solid meal a day? Meaning that, you know, we are a rice eating people, Liberians are. So can you afford to have sufficient rice that day with some soup, some grains, and just maybe a piece of fish for your family, so that they have all of the nutrients or that they need to be healthy? What is the state of the economy? Or how has it impacted the lives of ordinary Liberians? For me, that's a primary issue. The next issue is the issue of human rights. All these, you know, mysterious killings that's going on. Children are being murdered, ritualistic killing, you know, the abuse of people every day. I mean, it's scary. It is really scary to wake up and have all of these security concerns. People wake up in the morning, you know, the community is distressed because someone has disappeared. They found the body. They found someone's body in the creek. They found somebody, a 5-year-old child whose body part has been extracted. And there's, you know, and people don't even really address this issue, because people think that if they address this issue, the more they address this issue, the more it brings this issue to the forefront. And they think the more people would think that, you know, it's a fault of the government. No, that's not. Don't think that way. We need to address these issues. You need to be tough on crimes. You need to be tough. These people who are doing these things, you need to find them and you need to put a stop to it, because it's an issue of security and safety. People are not safe. People don't feel safe. People don't feel safe. So for me, the two biggest issues I think that the voters need to be looking at are the issue, number one, the issue of the economy, bread and butter issue, and then also the issue of safety and security with all these murders that are happening in the town. Those are very, very serious things. People need to feel safe.
So, Masa, before I let you end there. So, how do you drive that? How can voters concern themselves about those issues instead of what they are concerned? Some of them are concerning themselves with now.
But that's the paradox. That's the paradox. So these things, like I said, these things are happening every day. The issues are happening every day. They're staring our people in the faces. They fly in, you know, in the faces. But at the end of the day, the Liberian voter, again, I don't want to disrespect the people of Liberia, but the Liberian voters, I want to agree with that, my former professor, they tend to be adult voters. They don't necessarily vote on major issues. They look at frivolous issues. I will tell you something quickly. When after the 1997 elections that brought Charles Taylor to power, IFES, the International Federation of Electoral System, IFES had an office in Liberia, in Mama Point. And I was one of those from the community that they chose to do some focus group with. In fact, they subcontracted a grant to the Liberian Women Initiative, which I represented, SEED, and then another civil society group to do some focus group on 4 counties: Nimba, Bomi, and Nimba, Bomi, Bong, and I've just forgot the other counties. So they went at Monserrato. They wanted to understand how the voters voted, what drove the way they voted. And I will tell you, one of the things that stick to my mind is one of the focus group that I held at the OMVTC on Ghana's Way Highway. They had a lot of displaced people there. And when I went to conduct my focus group, and some of the questions we asked the people were, you voted for Mr. Charles Taylor overwhelmingly. What was behind it? Why did you elect Taylor? Why did you think he was a better candidate? Then there's some of the answers that we got. It was so shocking. There was a lady who said, oh, me, I voted for him because the man handsome, Papa handsome, and he can dress. The Papa is handsome and he can dress. And the Papa naked wash, and she did that day. The Papa naked wash he can wear. When you see him, you say, yeah, that person ain't coming. Another person, and this thing stuck in my head because it traumatized me. Another person said he voted for Taylor because Taylor had already fought the war. Taylor was rich and Taylor had already stole enough money. And Taylor was a strong man. Taylor could fight. He had fought the war. He had his rebel forces. And if Taylor went to any country in the sub-region, if he went for a meeting, people were not going to try him. When Gange entered that meeting, nobody would try Gange because they know that strong man they're dealing with. So, these were all shocking, but real life issues coming from real people who actually voted. It was really shocking for somebody to say they voted for Taylor because he was handsome, and he can dress. But, it sounds crazy, but these are some of the things our people vote on. Look, our people will be voting on some of the candidates because, they have this favorite uncle personality. Some of them they dress well, some of them are youthful, some of them are they are easy to get along with, they are accessible. These are the kind of things that the Liberian voters vote on. They don't vote on these issues that we're talking about, that you and myself who educated, we looking at these issues. The ordinary Liberian man, and then they're also going to vote on the basis of they see themselves in that person they're voting for.
But Master, these are not unique to Liberian. But let me go to Mr. Kalebo, because people say Bill Clinton, was killed, right? People said, or George Bush was someone you could have beer with. So, and when Obama came in, shining star, so these are not unique to Liberia. But Kalebo, my question to you is, how do we do this then? Because as I'm telling Master and as I'm saying, this is not unique to Liberians. People vote, and I also want to say that most of the people that vote, sometimes we blame those who are not educated. But if you look at our political discourse now, the people that are talking, the people that are digging their toes, no matter what their candidate does, they are, for that person, they are all educated people. Kalavo.
Yeah. Look, Dennis, I listened to the other panelists. I think we need to understand where we come from, or where we are as a country. Liberia, historically, we have issue with transparency. If you take the political parties, including the ruling party now, CDC, if you go to Nimba, my own county today, and you ask a CDC in Nimba, have you seen CDC constitution? Do you know what are the rights of members of CDC? They have no idea. They've never seen it. That is true for all the political parties. Okay? So that layer of hard information, then you have a decade history of public official not living up to the standard they set before coming to office. So you have voters sitting down that look, whoever will pull there is not is my life is gonna be the same. So that kind of attitude drive voter crazy to reach different set of conclusion that sometimes would not make sense to an educated voter, so to say. So I think it is in that context that sometimes because 1997 I actually worked as election magistrate in Nimba, and I listened to people. I went in villages, and I've been in series of election in other parts of the world. There are a number of reasons why people vote the way they vote. But in our case in Liberia, we need to understand that there is a history of of public actors misleading and failing to implement the promises they made to voters. So voters are saying to themselves, if you pull Wilmot Conan there, don't mind what he said, you will still the same way. I mean, I was in Monrovia, I listened to some voters who said, look, George Weah that we ate Kobo with, see the life he's living, see what he's doing. I never thought Weah would not even speak to my mother when he became president. Now he doesn't, my mother can't go around. I've heard those kind of stories. So how you expect that person if he goes to the poll? He probably might just vote for the person who gave him money and say, give me what I can have now because when you become president, I don't believe what you do. So there's a history of failed promises in our political discourse, in our political landscape. So I understand that. But I think it takes leadership to change the narrative, to frame and educate the voters about what needs to be done. Because as a country, we are in a place today that I would say, like my brother always say, Liberia is now, I see you. We are actually racing to the dead end if we don't do something about this. It's not like I'm a guardian per se, but Liberia is actually in a very terrible state of affairs. Like he said, Councillor Gongo would say, we are experiencing state failure in terms of peace. That is what Liberia is experiencing now. A state failure in terms of peace. All status, all agencies of government are failing to perform. So if to this disco, what voters should really be saying, some of the questions, there are many questions they should ask. I just talked to my good friend in Monrovia this evening, and he lives in Brownsville. He works on Ashburn Street. From Ashburn Street to Brownsville in 2017, he was paying just about $80 to go to town and come back. Do you know how much he pays now? He pays $350. Okay? So he works 3 days a week now instead of 5 days a week. Because if you go 5 days a week, the money he makes, at the end of the year, you'll be in deficit. Civil servant Irish making $100 US. Some of them living Mount Bagley and coming to, because all the ministries are basically clustered around Central Monrovia. They are paying more than $300 per day to come to town. Check that and what the government has done. The government has kept the rate at 150 exchange rate, basically, while prices are escalating. So they're making Lebanese merchants and Indian merchants, very rich. That's what they're doing, and those are their cronies. Yeah, but they pass the buck on to the masses. They say, yeah, masses, okay, you can do that. That's what. So voters should be asking that question. In 2017, I was paying $80 from Brewerville to come to Ashburn Street to work and go back. Two-way, $80. Today, I'm paying $350. And that situation is not going to change, because you know what? This government is now in campaign mode to save herself. So they are not going to concentrate on the economics. They're not going to concentrate on the bread and butter issue. President Weah is taking our tax dollar in suitcase, going to Nimba, going to Bon County, going to Mangibi County, going all over Liberia now, and spending it outside the budget. President Weah has become now the budget. He has become now the central bank. That is what he's doing. He's doing that because he wants to maintain power. And by doing that, he's affecting other indicators within the economy. government is a multi-variable affair. It's not something you just take. It's not something you go stand in front of women and dance or buka dance. It's not it. It's far complex than that. It takes a mind
you.
geek to understand.
Thank you, Mr. Kuning. Some blame President Tubman. They say because of the Tubman politics, right? Because we see this idea of the president dishing out money, and that's why sometimes the focus is on what we know today as development. So because the country has been kept impoverished for so long, if someone goes somewhere, being a candidate out of any elected office and build something that people appreciate it so much and they want to in return reward them, and sometimes I spied over my brother's shoulder to see about his psychology notes. And there's a concept where when you withhold something from somebody for so long, the little you give, it becomes so much because they've been hungry for so long. What do you think is responsible for the voters not being this issue driven? Or is it the entitled or the elite? How you call them? The intelligentsia elite?
The intelligentsia entitlement elite.
Is it the intelligentsia elite that are thinking that the voters are not voting right?
The intelligentsia entitlement elite,
including Mr. Kone,
are the ones that are thinking that our country is near doomsday. They are the ones that are predicting Armageddon for Liberia because they are now in power. The elites are the ones that are saying that our people are not paying attention to the politics of the country. But to the contrary, our people know exactly where Liberia has been. And they know where Liberia is going. You know, when people introduce partisanship into the discussion and when we defend the government, then they say we are partisan. The president of the Republic of Liberia has a duty to visit the political subdivisions of the country. And this is allocated in the budget of the Republic. He's not taking National Bank money. He's taking money approved by Liberian political parties represented in the national legislature. And he's making good on his promises that he made to the people. He's connecting with the people. The intelligentsia entitlement elite may call that different thing, but the president is meeting his people where his people are. He's
so Mr. Kuning, what are the questions? What are the questions voters should be asking the president and also asking the opposition?
The question.
Can I give a point of information since we are in a public forum?
The question.
Hold on, Mr. Kalabo.
The question the voters are asking the president is, Mr. President, how do we handle our healthcare issue here? They asked the president those questions. The president responded, and the president is unveiling projects that he promised the people. That's what the president is doing. The voters are asking that question. The voters are asking the question, how do we improve healthcare? The government has carried on considerable program in training doctors and nurses, revamping JFK, building us a new military hospital, building us a new hospital in Bomi. These are all responses to questions people are asking. And that does not mean that we still don't have problems.
And how does that translate into the health outcomes? Are people getting sicker or are they getting better now?
People are getting better, but for you, people are getting better, but we are still in a big hole because the whole country has been in a very big hole. So to dig us out is not a one-term thing. It's not a one-term thing.
So what are the questions for the opposition?
The question for the opposition is, for example, let me piece them together. Let me piece them together. The people are going to ask Joseph Himan Boyka, you were there for 12 years. What did you do? Okay. What did you do? What did your government do? This is a self-described squanderer. He described himself that way, not me. He's a self-described squanderer. So the people will be asking that question. The people will ask Mr. Alexander Cummings, what is your record of public service? What can we really hold to that will make you all these big promises he's making? The fact that he has not been in public service, you find all of his promises diminishing at the accomplishment of this government. You're supposed to give her a $1 billion budget. We already there. So they will be asking Cummings that question. They will be asking Burger that question. And this is why I'm saying the election will be on the president deliverables as well as the choice that want to take the president job. And in all of those areas, the president, the party, the government is in a very good place to defend those two turf.
Thank you. Mr.
Dennis,
Gongo, you can interject.
I just
Go
want
ahead.
to make this clarification quickly. I think Mr. Coney the public needs to know that Liberia runs a cash-based budget. What it means is that we collect the revenue at the end of the month. The Ministry of Finance, through the budget department, issue allotment to the various departments. So if you find one person taking bag of money, carrying it around the country, what happens to the other ministry? Their allotment are delayed. As we speak, I worked in Liberia before. I know many staff. In fact, there's not a single ministry in Liberia that I don't have my former student working there. So I get fast. Allotment for other ministries have not been issued. You know what they're waiting on? July 26th to issue it in terms of salary to cover up, to say, oh, you get July 26th pay. They're not giving them gas slip. They're not giving them paper for office supply. They're not giving them detergent. The bathrooms, why it is, you can describe it, because no resources going there, because the resources are being diverted now from other ministries for presidential campaign. That's cash-based budget. When you collect the little cash, you distribute it proportionally to various ministries. You don't give one ministry for the $1 million that they put for themselves, the $5 million that you don't give it to them in advance.
Correction.
It's the budget law.
Correction. The fact of the matter is the country has an approved budget. And there is no evidence to what Gonglo is saying that President carried bag of money in Nima. These are just individual speculation. I don't think we should dwell on that. But there is an approved budget that allocates the travel of the president internally and externally. And if anybody were to be elected to replace George Weah, you will still have those budget items. You're asking other people to be truthful, but you're not even truthful.
Thank you.
The person that you support, when the person become elected, all those things will go away. They will not go away. They will still be there.
Thank you, Mr. Kune. Mr. Sharif, Mr. Salif, please just jump in. Let's have a discussion here. Go ahead, Mr. Salif. And then Sharif.
Well, listen, if you govern well, all right. First off, any president, whether they're doing well or not, whether they're governing well or not, whether they have a disciplined, competent cabinet or not, they will accomplish something. That is just it's a function of how government works, how a whole country system works. They will accomplish something somewhere, and that is happening. Whether it's impulsively doing things or off budget doing things, they'll accomplish something. The number of things that we hear as indicators of governance success and development, YFE, for example, I'm tired of hearing that. If you do well, you create an enabling environment. The private sector is thriving. It is a buoyant financial sector of the country. You have FDI coming. People feel safe. There's rule of law, the judiciary, they can go to court, and investment can come in the country, invest their money, and it's fair play, right? If there's a problem, they can go to court and seek justice and receive justice. People come. When you have that kind of environment, people will thrive, parents will thrive, people work. They don't have to work in government. And therefore, the issue of government or president paying people's wire fee, the waiving, will not be an issue. Okay, those very cosmetic things will not be an issue. It's just a matter of a lack of planning, a lack of sort of systemic understanding of how to do governance. We have to mention them. When we see them, we have to point them out. You do well, we see it, we've said, right? Yes, you can build a certain infrastructure that will, there's this thing called isomorphic mimicry, where you mimic something that functions and versus something that doesn't function, but they look very much alike. You go to a country where the police functions very well, they wear uniform, they carry arms, they have all the emblems of government, of authority. You come to our context, you see the same thing, this is police, this is police. Question is, Are they really functioning? Which one is the real one? All right. So you do that. You build hospital. If the hospital doesn't have trained, qualified doctor, enough of them. Now I have friends who are doctors in Liberia who are doing well, who are surgeons and so on. I'm not. This is not an expression on them. They're not qualified, right? But we have few people trained. My nephew just graduated from pharmacy school. He told me, and I paid tuition for him firsthand. They have to put charcoal in copper to do a scientific experiment, some kind of chemical solution thing in the 21st century. So we know these things. I mean, we hear these things, we see them. We've worked in Liberia. We're involved in Liberia even as we speak. That's why we're talking about these opportunities, missed opportunities to govern. Okay. And there are the issues that we should be talking about in the election. There are the issues that the voters should be scrutinizing candidates on the basis of. And if voters can are now scrutinizing people on the basis of those things, they're looking at triviality. It's a missed opportunity. Yes, it's true. In every country, you tell politicians, listen, we have to make you look good. We have to make you appealing to the people. We have to make you seem accessible. Yeah, you can likability is a factor of electability. I agree. So what Massa was saying, there's truth in there, but there's also this is the way it is in everywhere. Dennis, you kind of came back. So why in America they say Obama was a shining star, Bill Clinton was handsome, he could play the saxophone. Yes, these are all likability factors. However, our electorate, our voters, is really hard to analyze them demographically, to analyze them issues based, because they're unpredictable in terms of the way they vote and what they value. At the end of the day, they come down to, all right, like you said, the person's from my tribe, the person's from my religious background, the person looks like me, that my mom's cousin, these are the factors of voting in the country. And therefore, politicians know that they don't have to explain anything a lot of times. They don't have to commit to debate. They don't have to show manifesto. Which political party have you heard manifesto thoroughly that you know their issues? They don't. A lot of them don't have it. They don't talk about it, right? Yet they get elected. So if we want to change our system, these are. I think we're having the right conversations. I think we're raising the right issues.
Thank you.
To
Mr.
a
Sherry,
point.
Mr.
Yeah.
Sherry, hold on, Mr. Kone. Let Mr. Sherry have a chance to talk now. Then we'll take a short break and read some comments.
Yes. So the Liberia, when Masa was talking there, I was listening to, and one of the things she mentioned was when they did the focus group analysis, and one of the voters was saying the man can dress, the man is a good dresser, the man is handsome. Of course, Taylor is not, right? But that's the way that person voted. And so it is amazing. It's absolutely amazing. But it happens in Liberia. It just reminds me of one time I was, this was, the war was already, I believe, the rebel forces, Taylor was already maybe in Kakata, approaching. And some university students, I was at TH, I was on the TH veranda, the top of her veranda, and a couple of guys, maybe 2 or 3 guys, were talking about the war. And they said, man, we're suffering. I mean, we know that they said the Peking, meaning Taylor, he's coming with the US dollar. Can you imagine? These are university students was saying that Charles Taylor, a thief, a murderer, was coming to plaster Liberia with the United States dollar. A guy who is coming and stealing everything in his wake, it's coming with the United States dollar. So I wasn't surprised when in 1997, the election results, when they were announced, they turned out to be that way. So I would think that the Liberian voters in this election, they need the questions that they need to ask Dennis to directly answer your question is, some of the issues that a lot of the panelists have already raised. The issue of the economy, the issue of security, which is paramount. Because, you can't have a stable business environment in fear. So the president has not addressed that. When was the last time that this President George Weah, has gone on the national radio and television and made a major speech about the crisis in the country? I'm talking about the crisis of disappearance, the crisis of ritualistic killing. Even when the president's own Solicitor General's name was dropped, there was no investigation. There was nothing. And so this government, again, it sounds like a broken record for me now. This government is taking the Liberian people for a ride, and they understand. Okay, keep in mind, these guys understand that the Liberian voters, again, as Massa said, that the professor who told her that they're trivial, they vote on trivial issues. I believe this. So from 1997 to now, it's been the electorate has trivialized their priorities. So we capitulate to demagogues and corrupt bandits and politicians who come in and give us bag of rice and t-shirts. What is a bag of rice and t-shirts? So this is how low, this is how much we've deteriorated collectively as a nation. And people who are voting this way tend to be in the vast majority. And therein lies our tragedy.
Thank you. Massa, I want you to have the last word before we take the break here. I was advising a colleague who got elected as representative for Sino County, and I said, well, uh, my friend, if you look now, you're going to be going to elections in 6 years. So can you just in your district look at those that are 12 years old? By the time voting time comes around, they will be 18. Why can't you target them now and start doing something so that they start to know you? And he said, well, election time, we just find money and give them, they will vote for us. So there's no need for me to start preparing 6 years in advance. Master, I want you to close before we take our break. Uh, on what my colleague said. If that's the reality, how do we change that?
I mean, absolutely, absolutely. That is the reality, and that is what all of us are saying here. Unfortunately, my friend and brother Wilmer Koenig is not agreeing with us. This is not like a CDC problem. This is not a problem that the CDC started. This is a problem that is systemic within the Liberian political or landscape. Other people came, they did it. Ellington came, they did it, and the CDC is doing it. So what happened here is that the CDC learned to survive of taking cue from from previous administration. So it's not a problem that was created by them. The only disappointment is that we were hoping that looking at the youthful ages and the the different experience, all kind of voice and stuff, and looking at the fact that they all campaign on the basis of accountability, justice, transparency, and change. We is a change person, and he was voted in on the basis of change, generational change, and all of that. So that's where people tend to be disappointed. I mean disappointed, but absolutely, Dennis, what the guy described to you is just one variable of the way our voters vote. And I would say the way our adult or our voters vote, like my professor said, people vote on trivia issue is because people are voting in people who they think are like them. I spoke somewhere the other day, and I made a comment. And as much as it sounded trivia, but this is a serious thing. I'm from district number 10 on the Oro or Yete Koruba district. I grew up there, went to school there. People know me there. My family is well established there. Everybody knew I'm Mr. Washington's daughter. Okay? And so, like, even people have the tendency when they think they can eat some money from you, then they start swallowing your head. Every time you talk to them, I'm still very active with my community. I take part in all the stuff and stuff. I sit in the United States and I pay my dues to my church and my father's church. Even though he passed away years ago, I'm still paying his due because I want his legacy to live on. So I'm still well known in my community. So every now and then, somebody will call and say that oh sister Massa, you need to come and run. When you go home to see your family or to go lay flower on your party grave, you will see some of the old neighbor. Oh, you got to come back. You're the children of the community. You're the original bona fide children of the community. You got to come back. And what I say to them all the time, I say, you think I'm stupid? I'm not going to come back to say I'm going to contest, okay, against Yeke Koruba because Yeke will flog me in the election. I'm saying that is because I know I studied the Liberian voter. I studied my community because you know what? They think that Yeka represent them more than someone like, oh, Mr. Washington daughter, oh, all Mr. Washington children, they've been to school, they're in America, they are affluent, they do that, they do that, they do that. Oh, oh, that Mr. Washington, oh, that your children that were in a big concrete hall, all of them went to private school. Who coming to put them there? That they're the only people our children got to go there too. So you look at all of those variables. It sounds trivial, but you look at all of those variables. I look at the thing. I say, you know what? You voted for Yeke them because you know that you see them like you relate to them more. I'm not going to waste my time. I'm not going to waste my resources. That I'm trying to put up now for my retirement. I will soon be 60 years, so it's staring me around the corner. I'm looking at, how I will retire and stuff. I don't have resources to waste behind people who just coming to
Thank you.
fool me now to eat the money. So people are voting in the likes and the cons, and people, Dennis, are not voting the way you and me think. We are educated. We look at the issues. Yes, people will discuss the issue. Go to all the Palawa, all the attire centers. Go to all the attire center. Those boys, they are all discussing the issues and stuff. But when it comes down to that one man, one vote, it's a different ball game.
It's a
They will
different
vote
thing.
the way they feel because what they think the
Right.
issues are not necessarily what we think the issues should be. And again,
Right.
who are we to
And, and,
determine what their issues are?
and maybe that's why we need to study so that we can meet the voters where they are. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll read some
But
questions.
Dennis, if I can just come in the anyway.
Oh, welcome back to Focus on Liberia. This is Tough Talking Thursday. We are broadcasting as usual from Atlanta, Georgia. Mr. Calebo Gonglo, you were saying something before we went for the break. Say that, and then we can go through our
Oh, yes, I just wanted to make a quick comment on the question of how voters behave and how to think. And I think it's also important, while we all agree on some of the issues historically, but it's also important to strike the point that the agent, or the messenger, the history or the background, the character, the integrity of the messenger is also important. Okay, so I don't want to pick on any public figure here before I get into problem, because Liberia is one of the countries where people practice collective guilt. But let's say if you are Mr. John Brown and everybody knows you to be on the wrong side of issues, if you want to get in public office and you come to the public and say, hey, I am going to wipe out corruption, I'm going to do this, they will find it hard to believe you. So also it's important to look at the background, the history, the character of the messenger. Also, I think it's important also to voters. It matters, we know voters have these issues. Multiple issues like our civil education in our school system, a little bit of ethnicity, lack of self-confidence, and many other things. But also, the messenger is a messenger, a person that is believable. Can we believe someone who probably served in the Tonna government or in the Togo government or other government can say, hey, you know what? I'm going to do this. And we pull the record and say, oh, but when you serve under Charles Taylor, here is your record. You're telling us you are a new Messiah. So, those issues are also there. So the voters are not just to blame entirely. We also blame the messengers historically.
Thank you. Let's go to our comments here. Elvis Morris said, most Liberian vote on a single issue and settlement. Policies-based voting in Liberia is absent. That's according to Mr. Elvis Morris here. Emmanuel Tia said, the people love their president. Do you think you will sit here in America and have a talk free without developing the lives of the people, something like that? I don't know where they want us to sit.
To go back to Monrovia like women went and introduce himself to President Weah. They wanted to go.
Okay. But, I mean, I was born and raised in Dudwicken, but I'm not living there now, so am I not supposed to talk? Archibald Frederick said, has Mr. Cooney seen the pharmacy at the JFK hospital? Hamilton Zilli, lay people should be asking these questions. Since 5 years ago, am I better off now? Do I want to live in the pockets of politicians or work for myself? Do my children have any future? Hamilton said, these are the questions we should be asking. He continued, Mr. Cooney, paying children YF fee does not substantially take care of the root causes of the problem, provide job opportunities for the parents, and then they will take care of their children's responsibility. Zeus say, my brother stop, okay, you say JFK, when last you've been to JFK and all that, so he's talking about James Panto said, the great America you live in, people are killing every day. Minerva Grant, VP Grant said voter education and awareness are what needed for the Liberian voters. Still more comments here. Minerva continue. How many organizations in Liberia working right now to educate the voters and not waiting for 3 months to election before going to educate voters? So they become little too late. River says Pro say, hi, Massa. He continued, during the past Lofa County election, the residents of the entire town said they were related to Sumo Kupi, one of the candidates. That was the reason they voted for him. That was hilarious. I don't think that's hilarious. Charity start from home, right? So people can vote for you. Okay. Hamina said the president can dance Buka, so I'll vote for him. Mind you, Mr. Comey start dancing to everywhere I see Mr. Comey is dancing, so he probably will out Buka Mr. President. Dave just say, what can
They
be
get
like
dancing
out?
to
We
President
want,
Weah at all.
What Dave just say about me again?
is it building house in the swamp? Is that the way President we are digging like out? And Dave continued to say, Mr. You are on the mark, Salif.
Good.
This cosmetic development project. That's how I described it.
So you still going?
Yeah, he got it.
Anthony Kofa said, it's easy to say, I guess you guys have everything going well in Liberia till President Weah became president. You guys must be kidding. The corrupt system the founding fathers created in that country has to be uprooted before you can have a good country. Most of you give the opportunity. Given the opportunity, you guys will do the worst. He becoming a soothsayer now. Joshua, same way, these presumed intellectuals are the ones that have destroyed Liberia for us. Their sweet talk, poor implementation, Mr. Salif, Madam Washington, Gonglo, Dennis Jar, etc. People are of no exception. If you guys and previous regimes had managed Liberia well, we wouldn't have come close to the presidency. He has a point right there. Dave also said they said the same thing about Weah, that he was rich and will use his money to build the country. He played football in France, so Macron will build Liberia. Sad for Liberia. These are a few of your questions here. This one from Jimmy Eastman, our man. Liberians vote on hope of change, but do not know whether the candidate is capable. All right, those are the few questions we have here. Quickly, let's respond to our viewers, but I want us to go on the next step, right? Where do we go from here? What do we do now? We are here. We have described some of the problems and lamented some of the things that our voters are doing or not doing. Mr. Gonglo talked about even the track record of the candidates. They coming with, so sometimes the messenger has it described, they themselves are the problem. What do we do? Mr. Kuni, let me start with you. How do we go forward?
The problem we face, and you're going to get tired hearing it, the problem you face is a serious disconnect between the intelligentsia entitlement elite and the people.
Mr. Kuni, have you added that new one? It used to be intelligentsia elite. You have added entitlement.
There is a serious connect
You
between.
heard something from me. Entitlement is not giving me credit. Now it's intelligence and entitlement elite.
There is a serious disconnect between the two, because the ordinary people know the state Liberia was in when George Weah took over Liberia, and all fair-minded Liberians know the state of that country even before George Weah inherited it. So what the ordinary people are doing, they are matching the progress that this government is making against where they were when this government came into being. And that would make them to make their decision. That would make them to make, no matter what the people here think. The people know that there was no road in the rehab area. The people are traveling on those roads. Somebody talking about the YFE. Yeah, you asked the question, how does it impact somebody? I was just giving you the impact that somebody who had to pay it 4 years ago, they're not paying it now. We're talking about
Mr. Kuni, where do we go from here? So we vote Weah to power.
Where we go from here, we vote Weah to continue the progress that is being made. And I think the Liberian people have arrived at that point. You see the reception of the president throughout the country. You keep saying people hungry. Yeah, people always been hungry. Our in Liberia used to be hungry.
But Mr. Kuni, the man carrying money like Father Christmas. You think the people will not be happy?
Well, again, that is the description of the intelligentsia entitlement elite.
He went to Inland Church. He donated $10,000.
You see the genuine love. You see the genuine love that the Liberian people are showing towards the president, the way they love him. And you see the president connecting to the people. That was scare the opposition. This is why they're throwing these doomsday scenario on the country. But Liberia will emerge, and it will emerge and stronger under the second term of President George Weah.
Thank you. Let me read this comment from Osric here. Politicians and political messiah intend to keep voters ignorant in order to take or remain in power. Liberia is a country in the ICU and would need political deliverance. That sounds like Councillor Gonglo talking about the ICU. Mr. Gonglo, what do we do now?
Vote Weah.
You are muted, Mr. Gonglo.
Sorry. What the opposition needs to do is not to fall for the bait that the ruling party is giving them. I listened to Honorable Akaras Gray yesterday and today. The whole 30,000, the 30K issue with the legislature has resurfaced. And now the ruling tower are saying, hey, we took the $30,000 and we'll take it again. But the opposition is also taking it. So we are all the same. So this is like a race now to say, we're all dirty, we're all stealing. That message is not a good message. I don't think it is because it shows that the ruling party does not want to run on her record. They want to run on the record that even if you take the job from us, the other people are dirty also like us. They're going to steal. That is what I'm getting from that message. I mean, if you just go by a little bit, a few weeks ago, the police arrested somebody. And what did the police do? The police say, I think they arrested a guy for sodomizing a 17 or 15-year-old boy. They said, the person works in Alexander Cummings' yard. Committing that crime, the crime was not committed in Alexander Cummings' yard, right? It was not committed near his property, in fact. It was committed far in different community. But there is a reason why the police was trying to frame it as the guy who sodomized days who have like a gay-like lifestyle works for Alexander Cummings, because there has been that talk in the air. So the police, that should be like a neutral institution, is now working like the agent of the ruling establishment. So what they're trying to do is basically say, okay, we are all just tinted in this country, you know. So they're just trying to like spread the virus in the opposition. That is a winning formula of the ruling party. It doesn't seem, for me, it does not inspire confidence that they are sure they can win. Because what they're trying to do is just say, oh, we're all dirty. No, if you move us from yesterday, the people will do the same thing. Look at Cummings, Cummings is dead. Look at the other person. The person, like Woman Kune just said, oh, this person is a proven scoundrel. This, you know,
So Mr. Gonglo, how do we move forward with this whole voter education?
I think the way we move forward is consistency. Like Councillor Gonglo has said in his 10 camp points, the notable one that I know, that thou shalt not steal, that hey, I'm not going to steal. I'm going to live in the same house I've been living if I'm president, and I'm not going to build a new house. It's a promise I'm making, and it's a promise that will be kept if I'm elected president. We need to get more of that. We need, like he said, hey, I'm going to pass the first 100 days. I'm going to issue executive order that nobody will interfere with police operation. Nobody, no government official will interfere with the operation of the judiciary. We're going to make it even an impeachable crime if the executive try to influence the legislature, and it can be proven that president must be impeached. Okay, so he's trying to take a bold step that, look, I want to make this country, the governance system, to work. I want a governance system that ordinary people can believe in, because we're going to have laws.
Mr. Gonglo, you have the opportunity to invite the councillors. So don't push it. Don't.
No. So I mean, I'm just, because
All
you
right.
asked the question. So I think the opposition should stick to the issue. Don't fall for the
Okay.
bid from the ruling party, because the ruling party does not have the issue. They are trying to introduce that we are all corrupt or strategy. They should not
Thank
go.
you.
They should stick.
Miss Washington, let's wind this down as we talk about the way forward.
Okay, first let me say a shout out to my boy River Pro and also Jimmy Eastman. Hi guys. What's the way forward? So I mean, we can sit here all night and speak about voters' education. We can never have enough of it. But another bigger portion to the equation is that the way the opposition has conducted itself and the way it continues to do. So the opposition, the way they have behaved is like, for me, I describe them as like the autoimmune system of the body that is supposed to protect the body from diseases and keep the body healthy, turned around and started attacking the body. That's what the opposition has done. And it still continues in so many other different ways. Now you want to replace the CDC government, but then in the meantime, you have majority lawmakers in the national legislature. This is why, by the way, whatever reason was behind Akarius Gray coming out to make his statement, he is completely right, because you have majority opposition legislators in the national legislature, and they're all taking the 30,000. Not a single one of them, besides Dalen, who has come out and spoken once or twice, but has been inconsistent. People attacking him all over the place. Nobody else, none of them have come out to say, oh, no. We need to send in a bill. We need to sponsor a bill that will adjust all of this, all of this extra budgetary allotment that is coming to us, besides our salary, besides all these different benefits. Then 30,000, I think, is every quarter or so. Not a single one of them has drafted a legislation rather, to address that. So you have majority opposition lawmakers in the national legislature, and they're still complaining about the CDC government. So the opposition itself is a huge problem. And what they do is that they confuse the voters and the electorate. They are confusing the voters. So already you have an issue of other voters that you have to deal with. Then you have the issue of lack of adequate voters education that you have to deal with. Then you have the issue of all these other variants. You know, people voting on the basis of their ethnicity, on the basis of just liking somebody's personality, on the basis of, oh, it's our time. And then in addition to all of that, you have the opposition in government, especially the House of Legislature, that is doing nothing besides just there, you know, riding along, collecting their own money. But then by the time
Church.
people start to speak and then they want to dump everything on the CDC, no. If the legislature was active and independent, a lot of these issues that we're discussing, they would have started the narrative to addressing these things long time. So the opposition here, Dennis, is confusing the electorate more. They're making it more difficult. At the end of the day, I would not be surprised. I would not be surprised at the end of the day if the CDC emerged victorious because of all these different variables that you know we just outlined here. I would not be surprised.
Mr. Sharif.
Well, the way forward. Um, I mean, we can say, systematize electoral politics, outline campaign processes like we see in other countries. Make sure that debate is sort of a mandatory part of political campaigning, right? It could be through the legal framework, the electoral law. I don't know, some kind of policy of the electoral management body, the National Elections Commission, so that every candidate or every category of candidates at the presidential level for sure must engage in a number of debate sections. That way, you are acculturating the people, you are changing attitude, you're changing mindset, you are orienting the people towards appreciating the value of messaging and understanding message and issues based campaigning and politics and so on. Look, all around us in the region, other African countries, Kenya, Ghana, you name it, they have tribal issues, they have regional issues that people vote more or less the way we do. However, what we've seen in other contexts, in Kenya, for example, is mandatory to engage in a number of debates as at various level of running for office. You have to, they have campaign processes very spelled out and very systematic, and then they have the electoral body make sure that those things happen. We don't have it organized that way in our country, so it's very difficult to sort of go away from the chaotic campaigning and how the triviality of how people vote and elect leaders. Because yeah, last week I said, I think it was last week, that look, elections give us the type of quality governance and quality leadership, and it legitimizes whoever gets elected. Whether they have a mandate or to do what or not. And so those are real changes that could begin to happen, but I don't see them happening anytime soon because in our country, unfortunately, we reward bad behavior, we reward bad people, and punish good behavior and good people. We ostracize good people, we ostracize good ideas, and so forth and so on. And so yeah, so it would take some time. It would take attitude change. It would take behavioral change, and culturating and orienting our people towards a particular electoral practice.
Thank you. We have 10 minutes to end the show. Let me go to Mr. Sharif on the way forward, and then we move to our Tabata session. Mr. Sharif.
Yes. So real quick, so the way forward, there needs to be upright candidates, real smart, bright candidates that should enter this race. I would encourage real good candidates. I've already stated some of my preferences in a different show. So these candidates, I'm pleading with them to enter the race. Um, Dennis, Liberia in a lot of ways is an African tragedy because what you have is a leadership that's not responsive to the needs of the Liberian people, and yet the Liberian people do not care, do not seem to care. This is a president who is not going to go to any debate. He did not in the last election. He's not going to come in front of the Liberian people to articulate his vision, and the Liberian people don't care. So I agree with Masa there that I also won't be surprised if George Weah wins this election. I mean, how in any other country he will be in the dumpster right now as far as polling is concerned if we were doing polling. But if you do a polling now, George Weah is still very competitive. Lastly, is the opposition. What are they doing? Is a question we have to ask ourselves. Where is Mr. Boycott? Where is Mr. Cummings? Where is the opposition? It seems like they're non-existent. And so that is part of our tragedy.
Well, Sherry, you're hearing Gonglo every day.
Yeah, I'm hearing Mr.
Are you
Gonglo.
going to hear a particular opposition?
I'm hearing Mr. Gonglo. I've said Mr. Gonglo is a fine candidate, but Mr. Gonglo does not. It doesn't appear that Mr. Gonglo has a chance, right? Mr. Gonglo has not mustered the resources to be able to run a campaign, nationwide campaign, to be able to effect anything that's going on right now to match George Weah's enormous.
Now you just opened a whole can of worms.
Thank you. He
has
It's too late, baby, but obey. I don't need your tabata. Baby, oh, your tabata. I'm gonna go away, your tabata. My baby, oh, I don't need your tabata.
Welcome back. At this time, we're going to talk about the Tabata of the week. The Tabata of the week. Tabata in the southeastern language, it could be Kru, Kran, Gribble, or any one of those, is complete nonsense, rubbish, foolishness. Let me start with Mr. Kuni. Mr. Kuni, what's your Tabata of the week?
I developed like 4 tabatas, but I think I will reduce it to 1.
Just 1 minute, please.
Yeah. The tabata of the week is the attempt by some Liberians that they think that they can shut down people from the southeast on the charges, the baseless, reckless charges of ethnicity, simply because the president is from the southeast. And the fact that these Liberians, they come from some of the most ethnically entrenched tribal communities in our country, is the greatest tabata.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo.
Well, thank you. My Tabata of the week. There is a story in the front page African newspaper today. That story, the headline is the Financial Intelligence Unit turned over $284,000 to the government of Liberia. I read that headline and I was asking myself, can you turn the deer to the hyenas? This government is noted for stealing, and you taking money and giving it to the government. The government can steal donor funds from central bank, and you take money you recover from theft and give it to someone that is noted for stealing. That's my tapata.
Mr. Sheriff.
Yeah, so the other day, I think it was a week or 2 ago, Jewel Howard Taylor visited Freetown, and she said that in a press conference, she said from the border to the city of Freetown, from the Liberian-Sierra Leone border to Freetown, she had a massive reception. The Sierra Leoneans were very receptive to her. So she's sitting there, and the vice president of Sierra Leone is lavishing, praises on her. I found that to be really odd. This is the same person who is supporting her husband, who has never apologized for the viciousness, that the untold brutality that Mr. Taylor unleashed on the peaceful people of Sierra Leone. So I found it very odd. And I don't know if I should call it a tabata, but I found that very odd. And the fact that she was in Freetown and didn't even come anywhere near an apology, I found that to be very insensitive on the part of Mrs. Jewel Howard Taylor.
Ms. Washington, your tabata of the week?
Well, I don't know whether it fits the
Let's see.
definition of a tabata, but I was just looking at this man, Carius Gray, the legislator. So when he came out in the midst of this Dillon receiving 30,000, did he receive it? Did he not? Controversy. And so Gray comes, and he throws a little grenade, a little smoke screen, and he's like, well, let me tell you, I just want to speak the truth. All of us receive the money. They don't receive it unto, I'm sure. So I just thought it was actually more hilarious to me because here, my man Gray, I think this is his second legislative term, right? And he's never told us before about them receiving the 30,000 whatsoever. But then it was so interesting now in the midst of Dylan being in the hot seat. Joe, Gray just comes and he throws this little grenade with the smoke and say, "I just want to let you know, though, we all took it, but Dylan took it too." So I thought it was really, really funny.
Mr. Salif.
Thank you. I think we should make a rule that no panelist Tabata should be against another panelist. Well, mine is from the retreat in Ganta, where I think the order of event, the program, something like that, leaked out, or at least it was on social media, and time allotted for these ministries, agencies, and commissions, government entities to give their report, their accomplishments, what they've done over the review period and what they have laid out to do going forward as part of the PAPD. So each ministry or each agency was allotted 5 minutes to do presentation, to do all of these things that I've talked about, right? They say you'll be cut off if you speak for more than 5 minutes. Until it was all on social media, all on the radio in Liberia and everywhere. Everybody is saying, how can you give a whole government, a whole ministry? Let's take Ministry of Agriculture, for example, or Ministry of Internal Affairs, these big ministries, Ministry of Education, that are spread their tentacles across the country. How can you allot just 5 minutes to each of them to give their accomplishment and everything that they've done and their plans going forward? So to me, that was a real Tabata. I think that was a planning flop. It spoke volume, and it just affirmed some people who criticized this government.
Right. And the president made an emphatic statement. He said, no room for non-performers and underachievers. I said, see who's talking.
All in 5 minutes.
my Tabata is, when I saw that, first of all, after the Lofa election, there was a big news about the Unity Party and Mr. Bwaka giving a speech in response to the election. And Mr. Bwaka listed a litany of issues, things that were wrong with the elections. Now, since that time to the time the senator was certificated, there's no protest, there's nothing. So what was this all about? Just big smoke? There is a way where's Mr. Sharif is the people in Kilipo can say it, but I'm not going to say it on air because you're not going to do anything. So why put on all this show and they just went nowhere? That to me is complete Tabata. If you know you had nothing to say, no protest, no grievance, just be quiet or just congratulate the winner instead of doing all this. To me, that was the biggest Tabata. We have one person here who said Tabata of the week. Ever said my Tabata is we are visiting and wishing PYJ happy birthday after promising to bring war and economic crimes court, but yet he's bullied with one of the worst perpetrators. That's his Tabata. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. I know Ms. Washington stated from the beginning, say I'm the only female here, so I'm going to take more than what is given me, basically. Ms. Washington, let's go.
Don't make my brother or Wilma Cooney say that me. Wilma, what's that term again? Some entitled something. What that term, Wilma?
Intelligentsia.
Yeah, don't make me feel that. I mean, the man talking to say, because
you just borrowing these terms from everybody. You borrow one from
you just not give credit.
You didn't give them that credit.
Okay, what's my last
word?
What
the CDC people can do?
Okay, what's my last word? My last word here is you will hope that the voters this time around, because you see there's a beginning for everything. There's a beginning for bad things, there's a beginning for good things. So I will hope that this time around will be the beginning for good things for Liberia in terms of the way Liberians will vote. Hopefully this time around they will really look at the issues and they will ask critical questions, especially questions bordering around bread and butter and security. The reason I emphasize security is that it's a scary thing. if you don't feel secure in your own home, people have been going into people's homes and bludgeoning them and and killing them. So it's a scary thing. So I hope the voters will sit and say, well, how safe are we? Where do we want to be the next 5-10 years from now? Do I want to be alive or do I want to be dead? What's happening with my children now? Are they going to school? Are they safe? What's the economy? So I hope this time around in the elections next year will be at least the beginning. It will be the beginning of our voters putting aside trivial issues and actually starting to vote on the issue, because there's always a beginning of everything. So I'm keeping my fingers crossed. I'm hoping, but in the meantime, Dennis, let's continue to have these kinds of discussion. My brother Wilma Kunin, some discussion is not about whether we like the government. This was not the kind of discussion, but you were very defensive, and in a lot of ways, you answer every question as if to say you were campaigning, and I know campaign has not started yet. But we are all one people. You are our friend and brother. We've been knowing you for 1 million years. We cannot dislike you. There's no way we can dislike you. You part your family. But let's just be fair, open, and objective when we discuss this issue. And may the best man win at the end of the day. With me, I like to be fair with people. May the best man win. You don't get your ducks in a row. Josh Ria will go back there for another 6 years, whether you like it or not.
Thank you.
Hopefully we got Councillor Gonglo in the race now. He's a very good candidate. We're keeping our fingers crossed for him. But hopefully, I hope that this will be the beginning of the end to adult voting for Liberian voters.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I spoke about Councilor Gonglo there, but I just want to reiterate that he's a good candidate. I've talked about that a lot. He's a good. I just need more good candidates, in the race. More of them in the race than the ones that we're seeing now. Dennis, the presidency, the office of the presidency, the president should be the model citizen that everyone should emulate in the country. But in the case of our president is living the life of the way he's living his life is he's showing the Liberian people how to corrupt, how to steal, how to be immoral. The example in Ghana didn't tell, it really tells me a lot, because if people are giving you money as the president, you shouldn't take this money and put it in your pocket and say, well, I'm going to spend this money. That is quid pro quo. I don't know if he understands it. He probably doesn't understand the implication of it. But as a person who should lead by example, you should turn that money, you should turn around and thank these people and, give this back some way somehow. And then the other thing is, the women asked him, made a request, and he said, I'm the feminine in chief and all the women of the Republic of Liberia are for me. That is a statement that the president should not be making. I don't care if he was joking. That is a bad statement. And so this election, 2023, should be about those things. Whether it's going to be about those things leaves, much, to be desired. And the Liberian people, it is incumbent upon the Liberian people to make a better decision.
Thank you. Mr. Kunin.
Well, look, this is a very good topic, Dennis. And as I indicated, as for the president here, they started that discussion a long time ago. The president has engaged the people have engaged the president. And what you see is a continuation of the voter-president engagement that is ongoing. The people have been able to tell the president what they want in terms of development. The president has accomplished some of those things, and some are not yet accomplished. The president is in the middle of some developmental programs throughout the country, and the people are saying that. And the question the Liberian voters will ask themselves is, do we throw out somebody who is already doing these things and bring in somebody who has no record of doing them at all? I think that would be a central question. If you go in Nimba County, you see that economic corridor is being connected by roads. You see hospitals being built. You see healthcare workers being trained in the country. again, when we say this thing, it doesn't mean we don't have problem, but the people are seeing the effort the president is making to solve these problems. After some criticism, you saw the sport complex looking modern like an European playing pitch. The president respond to criticism, the government respond to criticism. And these things are being done. So the people, they're seeing a leader who listen, a leader who pay attention to them. Our budget is increasing, and maybe by next year, I mean, this president will be the first president that introduced $1 billion budget in the history of the country. You know, the intelligentsia, entitlement elite may not accept that, but it is all of these things that are showing the blingers that President Weah is truly on the path to a one-round victory in the 2023 elections.
Thank you. Mr. Salif.
Thank you. I agree that this is a timely and relevant topic. And so in terms of what questions or issues, how to set an agenda, set a narrative, we've all talked about, we think that we need to begin the new culture in Liberia of political campaigning and campaign politics, whereby political candidates, as I said earlier, are required to engage in debate, to explain themselves to the Liberian people why they believe their ideas, their agenda, their manifestos are better than others. And what strategies do they have? What programs, social programs do they have? How and the how is it's very important. How are they going to do that? How are they going to get their $1 billion budget? What would they do of that budget? I mean, if you have $1 billion budget and 80% of the budget is wage bill, is recurring cost, that budget is useless. If you're engaging in cosmetic projects, symbolic political projects, campaign time projects to entice the people, that's dishonesty, is misrule, is actually the abuse of authority, whether you're an opposition or whether you are an incumbent. So I think we have to, as Liberians, we have to introspect really and be true to ourselves and say, look at us, where are we nearly 200 years of existence in Africa? If our country remains at account to all the indicators, all the World Bank indexes show that Liberia is very moving at a snail pace. Is this really how we want to be in 20 years? Is this the country we want to bequeath to our children, to our grandchildren? And seriously, that we come and just defend one another, people who are we share certain ties with, whether it's regional or otherwise. I think that is a tragedy, is a travesty, really. So when we speak, we're truly speaking sincerely to see Liberia to a better place where all of us can go and be, and don't want to be living in America or don't want our children to stay here. And we don't fix it. Nobody else will do it for us. Foreigners and white people will come and laugh at us and see these African people are incompetent. So, and the topic is relevant because of all these reasons. Because if voters are conscientized to realize that you can't be a trivial voter, then we're getting somewhere. That means that they can scrutinize the candidate, scrutinize their messaging, and hold them accountable. And when they win, when somebody wins, you also hold them accountable to govern. It's not that you don't love them, but because you love country and you want to hold people accountable. So thank you again tonight.
Thank you. Mr. Gonglo, you have the last word.
All right, thank you. And I'm happy to share this panel with the usual panelists tonight. But let me end on these 3 points quickly. I'm not going to be long. First, I think we'll talk briefly about the $30,000 that the guys have received. Maybe we're going to discuss this the next time we meet, but I think doing that, taking out $30,000 is actually in violation of Article 36 of our Constitution. That is outside the enumeration that is actually giving lawmakers. It's a different debate we can have. The other thing I want to talk about is I want to just pick on what my friend Mohammed Sherry said earlier. When you are president of a nation, you are the role model for the millions of Liberians. You set the pace, the moral standard. What President Weah is doing in Liberia is actually failing the whole generation. of young people. He's failing the nation. He's actually making Liberia to look bad. Here is a president, the government of Liberia, the agency of government of Liberia called the Liberia Anti-Corruption Commission, has indicted key government officials and recommended them for prosecution. What the president will do is in denial of knowing about that recommendation. He was in the so-called cabinet retreat with the very officials that his own agency, appointed officials, have said these people are corrupt, they stole money. That is bad. Whether you are a sedition, whether you are a proponent of one run or argument, we should condemn that. It's wrong. The president is not doing Liberia good, and he's not doing our children good. He's setting a bad standard. The last thing I want to close on is the voters should be asking themselves, any of you on this panel, you may know or you may not know, but I know I'm aware. If you see the number of Liberians that are going to Cyprus and Rwanda to study, if the education system, as some claim today, that President Weah is doing so well, if it is so good, why are government officials sponsoring children to go to undergraduate study in Cyprus, in Rwanda? Why are they in a stampede? You have more than 200 Liberians now in Cyprus alone. In Rwanda, by the latest count I have, you have about 80 Liberian students, and the number is growing. In fact, just this week, some are expected to arrive because they have better education system and the cost is lower compared to Liberia. So voters should be asking that question. Why are they sending their children to India? Why are they going to Ghana for healthcare when they get sick? Most of the government officials, they go to Ghana for checkup or they go to India. Why not to JFK? Voters should be asking that question.
We'll never know. Thank you. Well, continue to watch Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. We are by far the only network that cover almost everything. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., we have the literary hour, and the topic, Liberia annual presidential messages. Then on Saturday, we're going to be talking on the Liberia History Channel, from Fernando Po to Firestone, human trafficking and forced labor in the 20th century Liberia. What they call is arguing here that Firestone is even worse than Fernando Po. You don't want to miss that. Also, on Sunday, we're going to be talking about Liberian organization. Almost every Liberian organization in the diaspora, there's a breakaway faction. What's going on? Even the churches, someone have you break away, you form your congregation in your own house and you become bishop. We're going to delve all into that. Also on Saturday, Professor Alaro Topa will be my guest right here. So we will talk all the issues from progressive to the New Deal to Dow and everything in between. You just don't want to miss it. Right here on Focus on Liberia, where we educate, we elevate, and promote all things Liberia. It was tough talking Thursday. So I believe everything was tough here. And Mr. Kone, the intelligentsia entitlement elite, you got to go back and really break that down. The entitlement really doesn't belong there. So find somewhere else to put it. Anyway, that was
the brazen act to detect.
But thank you all so much. We want to thank our viewers for watching, even those who will watch later. Continue to support us. We are spreading to like Saturday and Sunday. We have our shows on Prime FM 105.5 in Monrovia. And our Liberia reporter, Theo Williams, has just been accredited by the Executive Mansion to join the Executive Mansion crew. FOL is going places. We are now 501c3. Support us. Your gift, your donations are tax deductible. Again, on behalf of all of us here at Focus on Liberia, we want to end with our song that says, we are all Liberians. Whether you believe the intelligentsia entitlement elite has coined by Mr. Kony are the problem, or you believe that Liberia is being mismanaged under President Weah, whatever your beliefs are, we are all Liberians. The only thing I request all of us to do is to do whatever it takes to make our country the glorious land of liberty. Have a good night and God bless you.
We are Liberia. Liberia is our home. Liberia people. Ilẹ̀ USA everyone. Liberia. Ilẹ̀ USA everyone. Liberia, Liberia.